Thank you very much. Thanks very much, Pierre, for that very kind introduction, and thank you to everyone who's here. Everyone who's taken a little bit of time away from your studies, whether you're wrapping up the school year or if you're taking some time away from work or the family or the last minute Christmas preparations. Thank you for being here in the middle of a workday in this lovely part of the National Capital Region. I used to work just nearby. As Pierre mentioned, I grew up in the south end of Ottawa. For any of you that are familiar with the Mooney's Bay area, I lived on Ridgewood Avenue. So if you come out of the Mooney's Bay parking lot, I lived right down the street in the condominiums just before Springland. So grew up in Ottawa South. And when Ottawa got our hockey franchise, I was very excited, not just as a hockey fan, but because I got a job at the Civic Center. I got hired to make popcorn for the Ottawa Senators games. Loved working there, loved that environment, loved having a team here in Ottawa. And when the Senators moved out to the Corral Center, as it was known at the time, I continued working there. And so knew a lot of people who were from Stittsville who lived in this part of the Ottawa area and worked there as well. Now, Pierre is right. My family didn't have a car growing up. We had a very middle-class family. My mom was a nurse at Scheer. My dad worked at the Ottawa Citizen. We had a comfortable life, but we did have to make some choices. We didn't have everything we might have liked to have had. So one of the financial decisions that my parents made was that they would go without a car. And that's a bit of a challenge when you're living in a city like Ottawa. It's not always easy to get around, whether it's to get to school or to get to work. And I used to have to take the 97 all the way from Billings Bridge out to the Canada Town Center, and then there was a shuttle bus that took us out to the hockey arena. So I like to think, taking the bus around Ottawa, you learn a few skills. Not only you have a great sense of geography, you become really good at time management and planning your schedule around, if the bus is a few minutes early, a few minutes late. But you also learn at least I did, I learned a great deal about persuasion. Because if you think it's easy to talk a girl into meeting at Herdman Station in January to go out on a date, you have to have a very good pitch to close that deal. You better have a smooth delivery. So that's what life was like for me growing up here in Ottawa. And when I got tired of the bus ride out here, I found a job in a restaurant a little bit closer to home near Elmvale. And I want to bring this up because it really helped me understand about the dynamic in our economy. Because there's no doubt that the small business owner that opened up that restaurant took an enormous risk. An enormous risk. I mean, the restaurant industry is one of the most competitive markets there is, and it's very difficult to have a unique product or a unique experience. The margins are thin, it takes an awful lot of work, a lot of personal risk goes into it as well. And there's no doubt that that small business owner benefited when his business was a success. But you know who else benefited? I did. I benefited from that risk and that hard work and that reward. Success is contagious. It is shared in our society and our economy when it is based on free people making free decisions, buying and selling with each other freely. That's how you share prosperity in an economy, not from a government who takes from one and constantly looks to drag people down to achieve equality. That's not the right way to go about it. Yeah. And on May 27th, I became leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. I can tell you we are focused, we are united, our caucus is working hard, we have great shadow ministers and members of Parliament. I want to thank Pierre for the hard work he's been doing. I know Pierre has a lot of support in this area, and in Ottawa, even on Parliament Hill, you got Christmas cards from people, from members of the other party, from the diplomatic community, Supreme Court justices. But there's a nice little tradition of everyone sending each other Christmas cards, regardless of which side of the House of Commons we're on. But I think there's one person who may not be sending Pierre Poilievre a Christmas card, and that's Bill Bordeaux. I don't know if Bill Bordeaux's going to be sending you one.
Lost in the mail.
It was lost in the mail.
Canada Post, Canada Post.
Yeah. I think he left it on the desk. He left it on the counter at the villa in France that he forgot. So he might get it in January when he gets back.
Might have to spend his family fortune.
That's right. But you know, after I took over the reins and sat down and met with the team and consulted with some of my colleagues in caucus, we said, I want to get out on the road. I want to get out to every part of this country. I want to introduce myself to Canadians, and I want to find out why the Conservatives lost support in different areas and start the rebuilding process and start the train to get on towards the next election. And so we started planning some events. Now, when a leader of a party tries to hold a town hall or a meet and greet, there's always a good level of interest, but if you can find an issue to get people captivated around, you can often get better engagement. So we started thinking about, okay, what are some of the issues we can maybe host a town hall around? What are some of what's the hook that we could put into an invitation to a meet and greet? And we were trying to think of some of the different policy issues or the items that people might be interested in. And then on July 18th, the Liberal government decided to give us that issue themselves. Because they launched an unprecedented attack on small business owners and the 1.4 million Canadians who are entrepreneurs or have taken that risk. But you know, it was an attack on more than just the 1.4 million small business owners themselves, because the people who suffer are not just those who own the business who will now be facing a higher tax burden, but it's the millions of Canadians who work in those small businesses themselves. Their jobs are at risk as well. So we started going around the country, engaging people to help push back against these changes. And like a good old-fashioned prairie brush fire, a Canadian tax revolt was born. And yes, absolutely. And we started working with chambers of commerce, with professional associations, with industry groups, with just individuals who got plugged in and wanted to have their voices heard, to share with us their experience and how these new changes would be so devastating. And it was great to watch that unfold, people from one end of the country to the other working together. Social media was great. The backlash on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. I remember landing on one day in Toronto, and as I got cell service back, I was going through the Twitter feed, and I saw a great picture of a guy in a tractor, and he had tweeted out, "Hey, Justin Trudeau, just here at my tax shelter trying to get the crop off before frost hits." So I just lost my mic there, but I'll have to use my speaker voice, unless that comes on. But one of the reasons why I was so passionate about this, as I mentioned, is because I got my start in small businesses. I got a job in Regina at an insurance brokerage. Literally a husband and wife who had sold a family farm years ago and put it all into this business. And they hired about a dozen people just like me, young, without post-secondary education at that time, without training in that field. And they paid for our training to go through the program. And those that are still there have their own book now. They are professionals. They've had other layers of training, and they're now very successful in that field. And they benefited from the reward that that small business owner also obtained. And those rewards in a free market economy are always shared. We always do well together. And that's the difference between the Liberal approach and the Conservative approach. You see, the Liberals believe that it is okay to tear someone down, to bring people down, to place a heavier burden on someone in order to achieve equality. But Conservatives believe in approaching it from another perspective. We like to say, let's help build people up. Let's try to reduce the gap between those that have much and those that are working hard to have more by lifting people up, by giving them more tools and making it easier for them to succeed as well. In other words, you don't have to create losers in order to help other people. We were successful. We did push back against the worst of the Liberal measures, and they've had to reverse themselves. They've had to walk back. And I remember, I think it was after the third press conference, media availability, where the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister were there trying to explain to people how they were retreating from what they were doing, but they weren't actually retreating because they were only discussing in the first place. And I remember I did an interview a few hours later, and someone said to me, well, the business community is applauding the Liberals for their announcement today. The Liberals are getting a lot of people saying, you know, pats on the back and thumbs up because of their announcement today. And I said, yeah, it strikes me that the best
announcements that the Liberals have these days are when they're announcing that they're reversing one of their previous announcements. What we're up against in the House of Commons. We're up against a government that is so incompetent. It's displaying, a lot of people I think wanted the Liberals to succeed after the last election. Canadians are patriotic. Even if a new government gets in that we might not have supported, we still want Canada to do well. We want Canadians to do well, and I think we give our governments the benefit of the doubt to see where they're going to take things. And after 2 years, I can tell you there is a growing sense of buyer's remorse in this country. A lot of people are understanding that they're not getting what they thought they'd be getting. Take the Minister of National Revenue, Pierre mentioned this bizarre attack on those who have used the disability tax credit to help compensate with their struggles with type 1 diabetes. Now, we had this minister for days denying that such a policy change took place, saying no, nothing has changed. No one's being denied their tax credits that they were obtaining before. And we're saying yes, they are. We have more and more evidence. And the minister said there has been no policy change. That we have not changed anything. The status quo is continuing. And then last week, she apologized. Now, when you consider that, she is apologizing for something that she denied taking place in the first place. She's apologizing for a policy change that never happened. That is what we're getting from the Liberals. The spin, their inability to answer the simple questions. So I have a great opportunity.
How's that? Okay. So I have a vision, a positive conservative vision for the next 2 years and beyond that I am out selling to Canadians. And it's a positive vision based on Canadians succeeding together, about creating prosperity for everyone in Canada, not just for those with well-connected insiders in Ottawa. Because that's always what happens, right? When the Liberals say we're going to make some people pay more, it's never them. It's never them. If you own shares in Morneau-Chapelle, you're not worried about any new tax hikes. The Liberals aren't going after you. But if you took a second mortgage on your house to start something and you've got a few of your neighbors or family members working there, you got to buckle up because they're coming for you and they're not backing down from their most egregious changes. But conservatives have this opportunity to explain the benefits of the free market and the benefits of a society that trusts an individual and trusts in people making free decisions. I was trying to find a way to illustrate this point, and when you look at how the quality of life has been improved in Canada, it's come from individuals themselves and free people making free decisions. It doesn't come from the government. 30 years ago, 40 years ago, in the 1970s, if you wanted to buy a top-of-the-line television, it would take the average worker in Canada 2 weeks to be able to afford to buy that television. Today, it takes 2 days. That is a real improvement in the quality of life. We're getting better televisions at a more affordable price. It's infinitely better today than it was 40 years ago, because 40 years ago I was the remote for my parents. And now we have all new innovations on it. Now, that didn't happen because there was a Minister of TV Fairness. There's no white paper on making televisions more affordable for those that were, the television class and the non-television class. There's too big of a gap, and we had to. But no, it happened because of innovation. It happened because of competition. It happened because producers of those televisions were constantly trying to find a way to make a better product and sell it to you at a better price. And who benefited from that? Each and every one of us in this room benefits from that type of system. So that's the contrast going into the next election. A conservative party that trusts individuals, that believes that there's more to society than just government, that knows that the government doesn't do very well at the best of times, and when you have Liberals in charge, it's even worse. I'm getting the signal that we don't have time to go into every single aspect of Liberal mismanagement, but think about what Justin Trudeau, everything he touches so far has turned into a giant disaster. We are now on our third round of a process to replace our old fighter jets. And after 2 botched attempts, the Liberals have decided that we will replace our 40-year-old F-18s with 40-year-old F-18s from Australia. Can you imagine if you worked at the inventory department for the Australian Air Force and you got that phone call? You guys want to buy what? I am not taking Justin Trudeau shopping with me if I ever have to buy a used car, because I don't trust him at all on that. But across the board, the Phoenix pay system, after prematurely launching that process and not doing anything for 2 years, we still have hardworking public servants who have gone without their paychecks. It's egregious. When you look at managing the tax system, promising $10 billion deficits that have ballooned into $30 billion. And when you look at where their priorities are, around the world, each one of our allies is doing more and more, not only to fight terrorism around the world, but to make sure that when those who have gone to fight with ISIS come back, that they are held accountable for what they've done, and law-abiding innocent Canadians are put first. And the Prime Minister's priority is to rehabilitate them. I gotta tell you, Conservatives are compassionate. We do believe in rehabilitation. We do believe that those who have made mistakes in their lives can be steered back on the right path. But we're not talking about an 18-year-old who's stolen his first car. We're not talking about someone who got in with the wrong crowd and can have their lives turned around if they were broken free from drugs or addiction or that type of thing. We are talking about people who took it upon themselves to go across the world to fight for an organization that allows our allies, innocent women and girls, to be burned to death in cages. When they come back, I don't want them spending time writing poetry or learning how to write a good haiku. I want them in jail where we are free from the evil ideology. So with your help and support, I know that we can get out there and convince more and more Canadians to come back to the Conservative Party of Canada so we can build a more inclusive Canada, a Canada that helps everyone succeed together, and a Canada that doesn't leave future generations with the debt that have been racked up by high-spending politicians today. So thanks very much, everyone, for coming over with us.
Well, I think you all agree that we're very proud to have Andrew back in his hometown, and we look forward to having Andrew as Prime Minister of Canada. And we have here some very special guests before